months ago. I'm like, wait, am I even saying minor?
The silent I.
The silent I. All right. Meghan Minior. Take two. Why don't we start with talking about how you came to the Flywheel, how you found a place in the Flywheel, and what it means to you.
I first found out about the Flywheel by living in Western Massachusetts, and friends of mine were playing shows there, and I thought it was like a really great space. So I don't know, I started booking a couple of local shows around like the UMass area and through like different dorms there, and I just decided that I thought Flywheel was totally amazing, and why don't I start booking shows there? I felt like being in a band, and well, in bands in general, I kind of felt like Flywheel was like a great space to support, and that I would want to get involved with booking shows there.
So when you came, what year did you come to the Flywheel?
I want to say it was around 2003. To my, it's hard to like think that far back, but I think 2003 was the first show I actually booked there, and that was in the old space.
Could you talk a little bit about the old space, maybe describe it a little bit, and then talk a little bit about the new space?
Sure. The old space was really small, and it was very like an intimate setting. They had like a room in the front that had like the cafe area with like a bunch of games, and like the zines and everything were there in the cafe, and then behind that was like the larger space that had like the performance area and like a really small stage. And even though it changed over time, like the painting on the walls and whatnot, it was always like really dark in there for the most part, and then there'd be a glittery gold backdrop for most years, and then there was a gallery space behind that, so it was more like a long, like rectangular kind of like awkward room that was really perfect for a lot of the kind of like more local smaller shows that would happen there. The new space, even though I love both spaces very much, is a lot bigger and can take on a lot. The shows can be a lot larger, which is exciting, but it definitely has a different kind of a feeling there just because it is more open. The ceiling's a lot higher. There's a lot more space to work with, but overall I would say there are really positive things about both spaces.
So I think what's kind of important about this move into the town hall is that it sort of goes from like a little, you know, a storefront, somewhat marginalized in the corner of East Hampton, right into like the heart of East Hampton. And you know, seeing as you've been involved in the Flywheel for, you know, closer to a decade than not at this point, can you talk a little bit about what it feels like to have this space move to the middle of East Hampton?
I feel like moving it to the middle of East Hampton is really important for like community reasons. I feel like by having it in the center of town, it makes it more obvious that it's there, and I feel like more accessible to anyone that comes into town, because I feel like if you're going to visit East Hampton, you're more likely to travel down Main Street than to kind of hang around the corner and like go to where the old Flywheel space was. So I feel like anyone, you know, going to Antonio's, going to the bank, all of a sudden looks and sees like the Flywheel sign outside, and they're like, what's that? What's going on in there? So I feel like there's like really positive things to having it more centralized in like the middle of town.
Have you seen any change in like attendance or in programming that reflects the move?
I think in some ways I feel like the attendance has gone up for certain shows, but I do feel like it is pretty similar, because I felt like the old space definitely had shows that would draw like a ton of people. I remember there was like a lightning bolt show there that had a line that just wrapped like all the way down the street and we were like, how are we gonna get all these people into the space? So I feel like I have noticed that more people seem to be attending, but I also feel like it depends on the show, and that kind of was the same thing with the old space as well.
So when we first talked about Flywheel, you were very passionate about the fact that it's an all-ages venue, and passionate about the fact that it provides a space that's multi-generational and extends DIY beyond like a musical expression to more of like the idea of community. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that policy and what it means for like a show space.
I feel like having a space like the Flywheel, to be able to have a space that is all ages, that is all volunteer run, that anyone can get involved with is really important in a community. And I feel like the reason why it's important is because you need things like this for the youth and for anyone in the community to be able to get involved with. I feel like by only having an area that has clubs that are 18 plus, 21 plus, it's not very like inviting for anyone that's younger. It doesn't like, the focus is not on the music in those cases, at least in my opinion. And I feel like by having this this space for artists to kind of like do whatever they want is like a really amazing thing, and we're very lucky to have it here in town.
So what do you do at Flywheel?
I book shows there and also do general volunteering. I would say, yeah, the majority of things that I do is book like 1 to 2 shows a month, usually, and then I'll like work sound at a show or do door at a show. I also, my Flywheel job is to help train new volunteers on, you know, sound equipment and help them like become bookers as well.
So as a performer, you've had the opportunity to play shows the world over. What kind of, like, as a performer, like on the other side of the operation, what does Flywheel offer a performer?
I would say as a performer, the Flywheel really offers like a great space to play. It offers like, I feel like a really unique experience for performing, because here you are, you get to, I don't know, play in this room that has like a pretty decent PA system. It has like a lot of space where, you know, anyone can come see you, whether they're 12 years old or 65. I feel like Flywheel offers just like a really good, just like overall environment for a good DIY show experience.
If do you want to like articulate DIY or like a working definition that you operate under?
I would say, to me, DIY basically means just, you know, the do-it-yourself ethic. Like, pretty much like, if you want to book a show, if you want to be in a band, if you want to play a show, if you want to attend a show, if you want to do any of these things, or just doing anything related to gardening, or, I mean, it encompasses so many different things. I feel like DIY for me personally just means, hey, you know what? Like, you don't have to just work your crappy 40-hour job a week. Like, you can do other things. You can like make your life exactly how you want it. And I feel like by using the DIY ethic, you're capable of doing so many things. And I think a lot of people don't realize that about themselves. But DIY has definitely been something that I believe in, and I feel like has kind of like opened up my mind to like all the different opportunities that one can become a part of.
So do you have any like Flywheel anecdotes or moments from like your history there that come to mind as like yeah, that was so Flywheel, or that was
Actually a funny story related to kind of, yeah, like doing your own shows and setting things up, and, you know, certain things can go wrong and that type of thing. I set up a show for some friends from Long Island called Slingshot Dakota, and we used to have in the old space, there was this like row of lights that would you know, shine down on the performers, and these lights had these little like gel attachments. And I remember I was just watching the band and standing under the gel attachment, or standing under one of the lights, and the gel attachment just flies down and hits me on the head. It ends up cutting my head a little bit. And to me at that moment, I was not angry, I was not upset, I was a little bit in pain, but I realized like, this is DIY, this is Flywheel. This is like really fun, even though, you know, I got a little hurt. It's like, it's to me, that moment just made me realize like, hey, I am like doing this myself, and we're all here for the same reason. And yeah, I just, a rather ridiculous moment at the Flywheel, but it just, yeah, it made perfect sense somehow, all in one thing.
So Ladyfest 2011 is coming up. It's a sort of halcyon moment for Flywheel in East Hampton, Western Mass. I'm sure you have a lot of excitement about this. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit. And
Sure. Lady Fest is something that kind of came together through me and a couple of other Flywheel volunteers who were just really excited about bringing more women to the Valley. And I feel like we're doing that in general, just through like different shows. Basically, I feel like we just kind of thought about it and we're like, why not do an event like Lady Fest? Like, why not try and get like tons of, you know, bands of all different genres, like still under the DIY like ethic, to all come and play at Flywheel at the same time. So we had like an initial planning, and then many other volunteers got involved, and it involved into putting together a 3-day festival, 1 day at Smith College and then 2 days at the Flywheel space. And I feel like personally I'm really excited about it because I feel like growing up, like I never really, I guess getting into punk and whatnot, I didn't really have like a ton of like local bands that had women in it, and I felt like, especially at a younger age in high school or in like middle school, like there wasn't like a lot of women performing in the areas that I lived in. So I feel like by celebrating that with this festival, we're really showcasing that like there are a ton of women in this area locally playing music right now. And there's so many different bands from around the US and beyond that are playing right now. Then why not like have a huge celebration about it? So I'm definitely really excited.
I'm just trying to back up a little bit.
Sure.
Sweet. So do you? Something I've always wondered about is that when you have a space like Flywheel in a place like East Hampton, which maybe is not used to being like a locus of cultural production, and you know, have you ever had to like have that conversation where you're like, you know, this may seem like young kids being rowdy, but like it's part of this international or part of this larger. You know, is that ever something that Flywheel had to contend with in its development?
Do you mean more like if there is like a rowdy show at Flywheel, like as far as like the community's reaction to it, or just more like?
Well, I guess there's this idea that like for, you know, at a very superficial level, you can look at Flywheel as like a part of youth culture.
Right.
But
right.
then in a different way, like, you know, the youth culture is sort of a happy accident or a smaller part of a larger idea. So have you ever had a situation where you've had to like had to articulate that to like townspeople or people who maybe aren't as familiar with that?
I'm trying to think. I feel like there's definitely been times at Flywheel where maybe, you know, I would say the majority of people that attend Flywheel tend to be younger. While that's definitely like not always the case, I feel like we do get people of all ages. I feel like sometimes, you know, there were a couple of punk shows that maybe a few like older people that maybe hadn't been to Flywheel before had attended, and maybe were kind of like not super into it because, you know, there's kids going crazy in the pit or whatever. So I feel like that type of reaction like is the only thing I can really think of as far as like maybe someone been like, oh, I don't know about this, but I feel like for the most part, everyone that attends Flywheel shows usually, I think, like enjoys themselves and has like a good time. But I do feel like because it is more centralized on youth, I'm not really sure what, say like the older, I don't want to say older generation of people like really thinks of it, but I do know that like we do have older performers, we have like older people that do attend shows and they keep coming, so that seems to be a positive thing.
So with the cafe and bar complete and Lady Fest days away from happening, do you have like do you have a larger plan for Flywheel? Like, do you have other things you'd like to realize during your tenure here? I feel like, personally or just as a collective? Either would be.
Well, personally, I know that all of us that are working on Lady Fest really want to do this every year if we can. We feel like this would be something that would be like really nice for the area, and I feel like the response to Lady Fest has been so positive, and we've had so many people interested that we haven't even been able to include everyone like within this event. So we're like, why don't we keep doing this so we can, you know, invite these like other people that couldn't be a part of it to actually like become a part of it, say next year. So I feel like personally, like I want to keep doing Ladyfest in future years and still booking shows, especially hopefully getting more international bands to come play. Because of my experiences playing in other countries, I really feel like it's exciting to have a place like Flywheel in our community and to help bring bands, especially like international bands or bands from really far away, to make them aware of Flywheel and know that they have a place to play here would be awesome. And to just keep doing, I feel like, the same thing that I've been doing for years and that all of us as Flywheel volunteers have been doing. And I feel like, yeah, there's always things that, like, as a collective, I feel like we're trying to improve upon, whether it's like soundproofing the space better, getting more things for the cafe, better snacks, or like that type of thing. Even though we've been doing that pretty recently, I feel like there's always room for anyone to get involved with any idea that they have, and hopefully we'll see a lot more new exciting things to come to Flywheel in the future.
Awesome. So my last question is another big question, but it's sort of the second component, and I'm sure you'll understand. What is the Pioneer Valley, and what is DIY culture like in the Pioneer Valley?
Okay, the Pioneer Valley to me just mostly talks about like the area in which all of us live in here in general. I feel like the Pioneer Valley is an area that is very heavily populated by colleges and a lot of youth. There's a lot of art in the area, there's a lot of music, there's a lot of like, I would say pretty like radical things happening here. There's a lot of like DIY, like whether it's start your own garden or book your own show, or I feel like there's a lot of really amazing things happening here. There's a lot of nonprofit collectives that are here. So I feel like this area seems to, I don't know, it kind of fluctuates as far as like the DIY. I guess I could say more about the punk scene here. I feel like it always fluctuates because I think the colleges fluctuate as far as kids coming who are interested in these types of things and not. So when there's a lot of kids that are here that are interested in doing these types of things, I feel like the amount of excitement about things really like escalates. And then I feel like it can also drop. And I feel like while I've lived here, it's kind of both been pretty high up there and then also kind of low too. But right now I feel like between having Flywheel reopened, having things like Feeding Tube Records open, there's so many people doing really amazing things that I feel like it's a really strong community right now. And I feel like between like the noise scene and the punk scene and the more kind of like high school music scene, and everything is starting to kind of like come together again. And I feel like part of why that is happening is because of like things like Flywheel and things like Feeding Tube Records having performances in their store. And I really feel like that's kind of like bringing everything together, which is exciting.
Megan, beautiful. That was really great.
I think it's really important to, if you have a place like Flywheel in your community, to like really support it, because I feel like there's so many areas like personally that I've traveled to for music that hear about places like Flywheel and they don't have anything like that, or they can't, like, they have a really hard time setting up shows in their area. They have no place to like book an art, show for their artwork. Or I feel like by having something like this in your community, it just really needs to be supported. Partially for the all ages aspect, which I feel like is really important still. And also just to have a place for like anyone to do like pretty much creatively, to have an outlet for whatever they want. Yeah.
do you think that, and this is just sort of like tangential, I guess, but like the fact that this is happening in like a rural area, like is different, or like has different kind of effect? Or
I feel like, actually, this is something pretty interesting that I've been thinking about recently, is I feel like part of the reason why I think Flywheel is able to succeed is because of its location. I feel like if Flywheel was in Boston, if it was in New York City, I feel like it would be, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like it would have a much harder time actually being able to stay open. And while we've had our share of problems over the years, I feel like just through different experiences that I know of, that friends have tried to open and start venues in different cities and they've fallen through. I really feel like it seems a lot harder in more of like an urban type environment. So I feel like by having it in a town like East Hampton, which I feel like supports the arts especially like heavily, that's part of why it's able to actually succeed.
Yeah. That was really good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna bring in a couple more East Hampton questions because I love East Hampton.
Yeah.
Do a whole, East Hampton. Let's talk about East Hampton. So maybe to get a little more micro, in terms of the Pioneer Valley, what makes East Hampton distinguishable, or how does it represent itself?
I would say what's interesting is for a long time, besides Flywheel, I kind of had this like maybe general feeling of like, what is really even in East Hampton? Like, and I think that's just because I didn't really know what was there. I feel like over the years, there's been like a couple of record stores that have been there. I know there's like a little art store that I go to. But I do feel like East Hampton, what seems special about it is kind of their, it seems like their support for anyone trying to do anything artistic. That's always been something that I feel like I've seen in that community. But by not living there, it's kind of hard to get a real, broad feeling for like how the town kind of operates, except like in dealings with the Flywheel, which is my only experience.
And when you deal with the city, or the town rather, who do you deal with in an official capacity?
Well, personally, I would say like my work at the Flywheel, I haven't really done a lot with dealing with the townspeople. I would say by being a booker mostly, like I haven't really been the one who talks to like the town mayor or like any, there's nothing, I've never really personally dealt with anyone in the town about any Flywheel related issues, even though the collective has. But I would say my only real interactions with East Hampton and the people of East Hampton in dealing with Flywheel would be like just people that have attended events, and also I would say like just different events that we've had to try to organize people from the town to like come to the Flywheel to like see what it's all about, in hopes that they will support it rather than not be, for it. So that would be my main interactions, I would say, with the town regarding the space.
Now, this is kind of just a personal pleasure, but what's like the best set you've seen at the Flywheel, old or new? Like what was like one performance over the many years that really like sticks out to you?
Okay. I feel like there's been many really memorable Flywheel moments. One of the most exciting, I would say, would be when Fugazi played a show that was organized through the Flywheel, which was actually in the space that we are in now, but it was before we had that space, which is kind of funny. That was really exciting because I really like Fugazi, and I was like, they're playing in East Hampton, that's crazy, and they're not playing at like the shitty like Iron Horse or like any of those other Northampton clubs. They're playing at Flywheel for like, I want to say it was like $5, and it's just really exciting. A lot of kids, a lot of people, not just kids, I always say kids for related to anyone, a lot of people came out for it. It was just a really awesome event. I would say personally, like through shows that I've booked, I feel like while they've all been memorable in some way, the one that we booked for our friends from Italy called La Quiete, I always really enjoyed a lot. I felt like that the space itself, Flywheel, for that show was just really nice because it provided a really intimate setting for that show. And that's always been one of my favorite shows that I've seen there. And I would say that lightning bolt show was great, like seeing so many people coming to the space, way too many people. And the room was so hot. That was the thing, is the room was so small and it would get so hot. And I just remember seeing the drummer of Lightning Bolt run out after their set, and he was drenched in sweat, like looking for water, hanging out under a table. It's like completely like, ugh. And to me, that's just like, again, kind of like symbolized like how amazing DIY is, and places like the Flywheel, to be able to be in a room that packed with people, play your set, and you're just, you know, there's absolutely no line separating performer and audience, which I feel like is like one of the reasons why Flywheel is so great.
So you mentioned Feeding Tube Records is like another part of this like push to like really open up performance space in like in the Pioneer Valley. Could you talk about Flywheel's relationship to other DIY venues and its relationship to like clubs?
Sure.
And, like, some of the finer points of that.
Yeah, I would say right now there's definitely like, as far as like DIY shows go, there are shows that happen at Smith College, at UMass Amherst, Feeding Tube Records, a couple of houses in the area, as well as Flywheel. Right now we have like so many options for booking like DIY events. I would say Flywheel's relationship to all of these places is very positive. I feel like everyone who goes to any of these places really supports the Flywheel. And I feel like the Flywheel also supports like these house shows, and you know, I really feel like that's like a really strong community. But as far as the clubs in the area go, like Pearl Street, Calvin, basically the whole Iron Horse Entertainment Group, I feel like there's no connection to Flywheel at all. And I feel like that is because the way that the events are structured at those venues is very different than the Flywheel. And I also feel like by having like Flywheel being an all ages space, these other spaces not being all ages, they just don't operate under the same ethics. They don't operate under the same like excitement for music, I would say. I feel like they're more profit driven, while as like Flywheel is definitely not profit driven. It's more like, hey, let's bring this into our community, have it for everyone. And while we do take a portion of the door to like help us like be a sustainable venue, we're not interested in just making money. And I feel like the more like club places in town, and even like, I mean, places like the 11s as well, they're not, by not being an all ages venue, by serving alcohol at the venue, these venues are way more interested in that aspect, in the money aspect, and not in like the music or the culture or the community development.
What if there are any like threats facing Flywheel? What are like common things that Flywheel deals with as a collective?
I would say one of the most like recent things that I've been dealing with personally, that a lot of us have, is just the overall noise complaints that we have gotten. We do have an apartment building really close to the Flywheel, and while we've soundproofed as much as we can currently, and we have plans to try and like do more to it, I feel like that's one of the strongest thing, like, I don't want to say threat, but I feel like that's definitely one of the more complicated things that's a little hard to know how to deal with. You want everyone in the community to be happy with the space, but you also don't want to tell a band that they can't play at Flywheel because they're too loud. So it's like, how do you kind of deal with that and balance out those ideas? So I feel like, yeah, I feel like that we could work to try and like create more of a balance of that, whether it's soundproofing the space more or finding out in the community exactly who, you know, hears the most noise, and like ways to kind of like try and involve them with the space so nobody's, you know, upset that it is happening. Yeah.
Any parting words of wisdom from Meghan Minior, incentive booker of the Flywheel?
Let's see. I would say that if you are at all interested in the Flywheel, you should become involved in it. I feel like by getting involved in a place like the Flywheel, it really helped me kind of like see how like a nonprofit, all volunteer organization operates. It gave me a lot of great experience, and it still is. And just supporting all ages shows, supporting all ages events. And and really just like getting involved with the space is key, because if we didn't have it, I feel like we would be a huge loss.
Beautiful. Megan, thank you so much.